Hello gardening friends, and welcome back to All About Gardening. My name is Madison, and in case you couldn't tell by the plants next to me, today we are going to be propagating succulents. Succulents are wonderful plants for beginners, those who want something low maintenance, or for those who don't really have the time to care for fussy or complicated plants. As an added bonus, they're also very easy to propagate in several ways. Today I'm going to show you how to propagate from single leaves or from cuttings, depending on the plants that you have. It's a super easy process and you don't need much to get started, so I'm going to show you how. Luckily, you don't need much to get started propagating succulents. Here I've got a pair of sharp and clean shears, and I've also got a light and airy propagating mix. This is a combination of coir and perlite in equal parts that I use for most propagation, but succulents generally tend to do better in grittier mixes, possibly with some sand thrown in. It all depends on what you have available, but as long as it drains well and doesn't hold on to too much moisture, you should be okay. For my method, that's all you need, but if you want to leave your cuttings to dry out in a separate area, you can also grab some newspaper to put them on. Step 1 in the propagating process for leaves and for cuttings is to find the perfect stem to propagate from. Now this is a succulent that I bought a couple of weeks ago that I've left in a low light area for it to stretch. If you keep your succulents indoors, you'll know this problem that's quite common when they're not given enough direct sunlight. So this stem has stretched out quite a bit here. It doesn't really look how it's supposed to, but it's still healthy and has plenty of leaves. In order to make the new growth more compact and to grow brand new compact plants, I'm going to choose this stem to propagate from. Step 2 is the most important part, removing the cutting. So what I'm going to do is take my shears and I'm going to remove this whole cutting from the base just below a set of leaves here. Now we have a very long cutting that I'm going to cut into a few sections. Then I'm going to remove the leaves from the bottom half of the cutting for planting. These individual leaves will also be ready to propagate, so make sure when you're pulling them off that you don't keep part of that bottom leaf on the base, because this will not root. So when you're peeling them off, make sure they come cleanly off the stem and that you have enough space to plant these cuttings. Step 3 is definitely the easiest of all the steps, but it does require the most patience, and that's simply waiting. Your cuttings need time to seal over before you can plant them. As succulents hold on to a lot of water, they are quite prone to rotting. So if you plant these now and they're exposed to moisture, the ends will likely rot off before they get a chance to develop roots. If you leave them out for a couple of days to allow the cuts on the ends of the stems or the base of the leaves to seal, you're much more likely to have a higher chance of root growth. I like to just leave the leaves at the base of the plant to seal off, so I know exactly which plant it's come from and they're all in the same place. But you can also leave them on a piece of newspaper in a dry area and away from direct sunlight to seal over. After a couple of days, once the base has changed color, you can move on to step 4, which is planting. So I'm going to bring in my soil mix in my container. These are all going to go in the same container until they've rooted and are ready to be replanted into their own individual pots. For the cuttings, you're just going to take them root side down, make sure you remember which is which, and press them into the soil gently. The leaves can also be pressed gently into the soil on the ends, or depending on the type of plant you have, you can simply lay them on top of the soil. I've got quite a couple to plant here with that extra cutting, and they can all go in the same container. There is some debate on whether propagated succulents need water straight away or not. I live in an area with quite high humidity, and that's usually enough to promote root growth without adding any water to the soil. However, if you live in a very dry area, you might want to mist the top layer of soil just to have that added moisture that encourages root growth. What we don't want is heavily soggy or waterlogged soil, because then your cuttings are guaranteed to rot. You can always try this as an experiment. Have one container that you don't add water to and one that you do, just to see how they respond in your area and make sure you have a higher chance of some of your cuttings rooting. After a couple of weeks, depending on the conditions and the plant you've chosen to grow, you should see new growth at the base, or hopefully root growth at the bottom of your cuttings, indicating they are ready for transplanting. As an example, I've got some jade plants that I propagated from individual leaves a couple of months ago, and a few individual leaves that have tiny plantlets at the bottom of them here. Now these are definitely quite overgrown. You can see this one has the original leaf I used still attached to it that I can pull off, and these roots have grown quite extensively that are quite difficult to pull off. Yeah, so this is the root growth of this cutting that's definitely long overdue for a transplant. These I also pulled off probably about 2 weeks ago, and you can see the root growth here. So these are all signs that your succulents are ready for transplanting into their own individual pots to grow into brand new plants. Give these steps a try on any of your favorite succulents to grow as many of them as you can at no extra cost to you. If you want details on the specific steps, you can head to allaboutgardening.com or stick around and take a look at the other videos on our channel for more plant tips and tricks.